Hello, welcome to John McHugh Real Estate. Thanks for tuning in. One of the most important things a buyer or seller in a real estate transaction can do is select a real estate attorney. Quite often we get into the transaction as buyers and sellers agents and we're negotiating the offer. We're moving it forward, back and forth. People will come up a few dollars, down a few dollars. We'll negotiate the terms. By the time that we get to an accepted offer, sometimes the deal can be a little bit contentious between buyers and sellers. That's why one of the most important things people can do is select a strong, experienced real estate attorney, and we've got one today. Please welcome Amy Weil from Kertzman Weil LLP.
Great, thanks so much for having me today, John. I really appreciate it.
Glad to have you here, Amy. I've known you for over 20 years. We've worked together for a long time. I've appreciated all of your help and your experience. And what made you concentrate and decide to focus on real estate law specifically?
Thanks for asking. I love telling a quick story about how I went to Babson College right here, local, in Wellesley, and studied business, and I really wanted to go into business, and one day I decided I wanted to go into law. So when I got through law school, it was a wonderful opportunity to get into real estate. The markets were booming, and it was a great time in the early 90s. So I had an opportunity to get into real estate, and I thought it would really combine my business degree from Babson as well as my law experience and my degree from Suffolk Law, and put it all into one, and it afforded me the opportunity to have my own firm, something I always wanted.
Fantastic. And in Wellesley, to have that business background is great. And I'll often say that to buyers and sellers that I represent, because you never know who you're getting behind the facade. I think everyone drives a similar car and their business cards look the same. But when I tell people I have a 4-year business degree, I'm not just getting away from my cat or what have you. This is what I do full time, that it makes a difference. And I think having a real estate attorney that really has been there before, so that if any walls are bumped into, you'll easily be able to have solutions to navigate around them because you've done it before. How long have you been practicing?
I've been practicing since '92, so it's just over 30 years now, and I've done real estate that whole time. During my entire career, I focused my practice on real estate, primarily residential real estate. And it's really neat because in addition to going to college at Babson and Wellesley, I grew up in Wellesley, went to high school in Dover, live in Needham. So in addition to bringing that business background, bringing that local knowledge, that institutional knowledge of the towns that we serve out here in Metro Boston, it's been fun. I get to represent people I went to nursery school with, or middle school with, or college.
That's great. So it's almost like a local small town expert that's big business educated and prepared. I like that. How many people are on your team? Because I've been to your office many times, and every time I call in, there's a happy, friendly voice, and they get me to where I need to be. But there's a lot of people there. When I come into your office, I see them. How many do you have working for you?
So we have 5 lawyers, and again, the whole firm focuses on real estate. It's quite nice to have such a niche practice where we only have to focus on one thing, and it's hard to keep up on all the changes and regulations. So really focusing our practice makes a big difference. So there's 5 attorneys, and on top of that, we have 7 support staff in paralegals and clerks and admins that we really need to get through all of the paperwork that real estate entails.
That's really impressive to have something like that, because I know a lot of attorneys are on their own, and again, you don't know until you've experienced it. So you've got the support staff so you can be there with your finger on the pulse.
Yeah, I really have 2 things that drive me crazy. Number one is being stuck in someone's voicemail. So I like to know that someone's going to get through to a human being. There's always someone answering the phone. There's always someone they can talk to if I'm not there, whether it's my paralegal or one of my partners. There's always someone there. And I never like to be late. So if our closing's running late, for one closing, I always have someone else who can step in and make sure the other person doesn't have to wait. So those are 2 of my little pet peeves about running my business that I've always been proud of.
Preparation,
yes.
I like it, and it's key to everything. As a buyer and seller agent, what I'll do is I'll accept an offer from a buyer's agent if it's from my seller.
Of course.
When we get to that point, and a lot of has already happened, and then basically we're going to pass it along to the attorney so that the buyer can have their side represented and the seller can have their side represented, and the attorneys can come to a mutually agreeable purchase and sale agreement. But not just that, you're going to use your knowledge to provide legal advice for the entire process. So when we turn it over to you at that point, when we're all like, let's keep it moving forward, it's been a lot so far, what do you do from that point on? If you could describe the process of what a real estate attorney will do after you're presented with the accepted offer for the transaction.
Yeah, I really like to get to know my client. One of the first things I ask them on the call is, give me a little bit of background. Tell me a little bit about your search, how you got here, not just diving right in. I like to know the process they went through up until that point. Were they beaten up hard on the price? Did they feel like they got a great price? Have they made 15 offers and this is the first one that got accepted? Just a little background helps set the stage. So the first thing I ask is about their process, and they usually come to me well prepared if they have a great broker like you. So they've got their whole team set up, they've got their lender set up, and they've got all the players in place. And it's our job to really start coordinating from there. We'll start with working on their purchase and sale agreement, and those are negotiated in Massachusetts, so we want to make sure they have good access to the property between the purchase and sale and the closing. We want to make sure they have as many representations and warranties in the purchase and sale that we can get for them. And when we're representing the buyer, we'll also do the closing. So we'll do things like check to make sure the title is clear, make sure that we've done a plot plan on the property, and we've checked the taxes. So we do all of that in preparation for the closing, and if we have a seller, we're going to be looking at making sure, where are they headed? Do they have plans in place to make sure they're out on time? Do they have a clear title to the property? We don't want to run into something when we get close to closing. So one thing that we do for our sellers is we do a quick check of the title, make sure there's no missing discharges. So we're going to immediately dive in, and people who come from other states are often confused why there's an attorney involved.
Sure, like in California where you go directly to the purchase and sale.
That's right. They're like, what? Why do I need an attorney? And I tell them it's one stop. We do everything. We're going to take care of you through the contract negotiation. We're going to take you through title. We're going to take you through escrow and closing and the whole thing. And we're really going to be that central processing and work with the rest of their team to have a successful closing.
And do you use other vendors for things like a title search and title research or any other aspect? Or is it all in-house? I mean, you must use some other people.
We do. We use outside title vendors. Some other people don't. But for us, we find that having a second set of eyes on the title. So we'll have an examiner run the title, and then we'll examine their work in-house. So we always do a second check on the title. It's one of the biggest parts of our jobs after the purchase and sale is done, to really make sure that these people are getting good title to the property, that they're not going to have a problem someday when they go to sell it. So we take that seriously. The other thing that we hire out someone to do is the plot plan. So we have someone that goes to each of the properties to make sure that the house is within the boundaries of the lot and that there's no encroachments on the lot. So we're going to send somebody out to do that work. And then we have other vendors. For instance, one of the neat things that's happened over the last few years is that we've been able to electronically record documents.
Right, I saw that change, and it was really, really interesting to see how many things have become electronic. First, it was signatures, which was great. We didn't have to go out at 11:30 at night on a Sunday or whatever, and then it became the Zoom meeting, and now you can even do some of your legal work that way.
Yes, the electronic signatures has really added to the ability to get things done quickly and efficiently. So we use an outside vendor where we send the documents to them and they record them. It's really been a game changer. You can't do it for all the transactions, but I would say most of them you can. And again, it's allowed us to move quicker, allowed us to get the seller their money from the closing quicker, and allowed the buyers to get the keys faster.
That, you mentioned the title work, and I'm not usually involved in a lot of that. I'm out dealing with the buyers and the sellers, arranging the showings and the negotiations. I've heard a lot about title fraud. It's always in everyone's disclaimers here and there. Can you talk to me briefly about what might occur with a problem with a title or title fraud, please?
Yeah. So titles are, again, one of the big pieces of our work. Very important to what we do to make sure that the title's clear to the property. And just like any other insurance, we are going to recommend to our clients that they get owner's title insurance. And we hope you never need it. It's a one-time expense. Unlike most insurance that you pay for every year, this is a one-time expense. And we really recommend people get that because we don't want them to have a problem when they go to sell the property. So the things that we run into most often are, for instance, the other day someone went to sell a property and there was a mortgage still on the title from 3 owners ago. Now in a lot of cases those are pretty easy to fix. It just takes time. but it can delay a closing. So if you have the title insurance, it will allow you to close, and then the problem can be fixed afterwards. But I've had some really serious title problems in my career. Everything from just in the last couple months, a client who it turned out didn't get the entirety of the property. They actually, for 20 plus years, owned a property thinking they owned it all. And in fact, the title wasn't clear, and they really didn't own 100% of the property. I've had calls from people in which they believe that the deed was signed fraudulently, even though it has to be notarized. We've had people buy properties not realizing there's an easement across their property or under their house.
Amazing.
It's unbelievable.
It's not just a case of I've always mowed this part of the lawn, so it's mine. These are where we get into the legal aspect of all of it. That's scary. And so you're able to rectify those things. But if they have the insurance, they can go ahead and close.
The insurance is so important. And remember that our registries, unlike California and other places, we have to do a 50-year search. And our registries are incredibly antiquated. If anyone's ever taken a field trip there,
Not
they
all
can
of it
see.
on the computer, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's it's still books on the wall, and so human error is rampant in the business. But that's why we are always recommending to our clients. And they often think, oh, I don't need to get that. There's not going to be a problem. Well, hopefully there won't be. We think we do a good job. But when there is, you want that multi-million-dollar company standing behind your title to make sure you're not going to have a problem selling it.
For sure. And that's not the only thing that I've seen you do for your clients. As we talked about the evolutions in technology, I've noticed you provide some similar luxury services in that I've noted a lot of the sellers that I've worked with Amy have not even attended the closing. It's interesting when you have the buyers and the sellers. The buyers have to sign their mortgage and all of that. That's quite a bit of paperwork, right? But quite often the seller doesn't need to do all of that. And I've seen quite often you not require a seller to attend when it's in your office. How do you arrange that?
Yeah, so pre-COVID, it was really starting to become the norm for the sellers not to attend the closing. We have two practical reasons. Number one is just the logistics of selling, the buyer's sitting there, they need to be focused. If the seller's there, there's a lot of conversation, and I think it really distracts the buyer from what they need to be doing. So I would tell my sellers, it's probably not the best place to be visiting with the buyer.
I know I love the conversation.
I know.
When I'm in your office especially, it's dangerous to have me attend the closing because you don't get to see each other that often.
Yeah.
So I can definitely see how that would come into play. You just want to keep it moving and keep everything focused.
Yeah, we want the buyer to really have that time to really be understanding what they're signing. And the second thing is sometimes there's conversations that we as the attorney might have to kick our client under the table and be like, that is not really a good conversation to be having right now, when they start talking about the neighbor across the street that they've never liked, and things like that just aren't appropriate for a closing. So we feel that it's really a convenience for our seller. We like to do it. It allows us to be better prepared too. We have all the documents ready to go, and again, what we're trying to do for a seller, we want them to get the money from their sale as quickly as they can. Many of them are buying another property, and we want them to be able to get that done. Efficiency, that's really, really important. So anything we can do to make that easier and quicker for them, we're going to do that. And so having them pre-sign makes sense. But that's a rather new, something new that happened. After COVID, it really solidified that sellers just generally don't come to closing.
Yeah, and we keep evolving. Everything keeps evolving. And there are a number of real estate agents out there as well that are still, they have that framework that are still on the rotary phone. They do it all by phone. And that's wonderful if that works for them and their clients. That's the difference. So you are really client focused, and I like that very much. That's great, whatever you can do for your clients. I wanted to ask you, what makes your job specifically difficult? I know when I'm negotiating with a buyer's agent that's brought someone to my listing, we're there to represent our clients and to make sure that we are looking out for them 100%, and we kind of go back and forth over what might be black and white that the seller should definitely pay for that, like a radon remediation or something like that. But like a broken pane of glass, for instance, on my end of it, that was kind of noticeable when you walked into the property, so it's not like it's something that wasn't visible by the naked eye. What type of situations might you run into when you're going back and forth with your colleagues that might be a little bit sketchy now and then?
Yeah, so you bring up a good point. One of the biggest things that gets us in trouble, I think we do a great job of doing the purchase and sale agreement, but people forget that we've never seen the house. And that's really important. So we try to really say to our buyers and our sellers and all the parties, tell us if there's anything we need to know about the house. Tell us if there's a swimming pool. Tell us if there's a hot tub we should be worried about. So when we get to closing, sometimes those things aren't dealt with in the purchase agreement. Does the washer and dryer stay? I can't tell you how many brokers in my career, unfortunately, have had to buy a washer dryer because it wasn't laid out in the purchase and sale, and it's unfortunate. So we actually have a checklist of what we go through. Everything now from hot tubs, direct TV, solar panels have become a huge one. Any appliances that might be unusual, and really try to nail these things down specifically in the purchase and sale agreement. Now, you mentioned that there might be a broken window pane or there might be high radon. Now, remember, we just went through a time where people weren't even doing inspections, and they had to accept it. But we're kind of coming back around to doing the inspections, which I'm thrilled about.
More often than not, and I've never brought a buyer in without specifically recommending an inspection.
Yeah.
I agree with you, but many have been waived.
They have, and I fear what that will bring in the next few years when those houses go to get sold, but
for sure,
not worrying about that today. But I agree with you. When a buyer makes an offer on a house and they can see something, they can see the broken window, they can see the house might need painting, I would say that those things, they're making their offer based on those items. But if they get in there and they do a radon test and radon's high, I really think something like that, generally speaking, should be remediated. Radon's not healthy. It needs to be.
For sure. That would be a seller's
remediated.
responsibility, I think.
Yeah.
Whenever we look at something like that, and we can split the difference between who's responsible for what, but I can imagine if it gets to you, it's not always the easiest. So it's good to have someone who's a strong negotiator, and that works well. I wanted to ask you what you would ask, how you would advise buyers and sellers who are just getting started. What would you ask them or make sure that they are aware of before they enter a transaction?
Yes, so I think that some of the most important things is getting the best team you can. And you know this better than anyone. You really take care of your clients, and I think that's so important to have someone like you who's really going to take them and handhold them. Not say, go out and do some, why don't you go out and do some open houses on your own? They need a team of people that are really going to be there. It is a stressful process, but it can be fun, it's exciting. It's such a part of people's lives.
And you go right back to what I mentioned in the beginning. It really is a chain link effect where every part of the team is important. And that's the first thing I said is when we build it all up and we have the accepted offer, we're going to hand it to somebody, folks, and it should be a really strong attorney. And after over 20 years, I've never had a problem because I will sometimes call you and say, here's the details, here's what we're going, and you are always interested in what you can do. Like, I haven't seen the house, so give me the basics in the background.
Right,
and I like that.
Being able to have that conversation, you and I had a client today and was just so excited that I was talking directly to their broker and being able to really coordinate them. They still have a job to do, they have work, they have kids, anything we can take off their plate and any stress we can. And because we have a relationship, we're able to have those conversations, figure it out, and bring back a solution to the client. And that's the whole team mentality that I think is really important.
Have you ever had a nightmare scenario? I ask a lot of people this, like a nightmare scenario. The last time I asked a mortgage broker, I didn't get anything more than a bit of a positive wrap-up, which is good. But I like to see, and I'm sure the viewers would like to know, what's the type of nightmare scenario you may have run into during your experience?
Yeah, the biggest nightmares that we run into is when the house is not left in the condition it should be. We've had some houses left in some pretty rough condition, and those are the toughest because the seller's done. They're tired,
Right.
They've been packing, they want to be gone, and the buyer has an expectation for this beautiful, shiny house. And I always tell my sellers, I'm like, leave a little love note for your buyers. Leave them a love note. Leave them a bottle
We're
of
all
wine.
in this together, and in fact, they gave you what you were looking for the most part.
Yeah. Probably one of my biggest situations was a case where a couple days before closing, the house had an insurance a loss, a rather large loss, over $1 million loss due to a frozen pipe causing water damage throughout the house. So there's a number of clauses in the purchase and sale agreement that people usually gloss over. Fortunately, I had great language in the purchase and sale to cover this, such that we knew, how the insurance proceeds would be paid out and how the house could get rebuilt for these buyers who still wanted this house and needed a place to live. So that was one of my tougher ones, because here we are a couple days before closing and this lovely family is ready to move in, and all of a sudden the house just isn't livable. And we had to work out a way for them to get the insurance money, fix up the house, and get them moved in. And happily, they're still in the home, and they were just, everyone worked together so beautifully. But
Good for you.
It was hard. It was scary. It was stressful, and we just wanted to get it all worked out.
Good for you for filling in all those puzzle pieces and making sure that everyone is happy and satisfied at the end. I'm not sure if you'd remember, it's funny that you brought up water, because we had a situation, and this must have been probably about 18 years ago. Long story short, I had my buyers had purchased a listing, a high-end listing in Needham, and on the seller's disclosure, it stated no water damage, which you either fill out a seller's disclosure, which would be the basic questionnaire of anything that the sellers are aware of regarding their home, any problems with the roof, any structural, electrical, mechanical problems. And they had noted in this seller's disclosure that there had never been any water. And the transaction proceeds on, and then my buyers go to apply for a insurance policy for their property, prior to the closing, and they were told that they couldn't get insurance. And then a couple of other quotes that they got were very, very high. And it turned out in the end that an insurance claim had been paid for over $300,000 just a few months ago to cover water damage that had happened in the home. And I was shocked. I had never encountered this. And I guess that the seller's or the agent's perspective was that because there's no water damage now, they can put no water damage. And you were able to pull us right out of that. But from the brink, even the buyer's ready to walk away, the seller's done. So it's things like that. I don't know how you do it on a day-by-day basis. And not one. How many transactions do you handle at a time?
I mean, I probably have 20 or 25 on my desk, in the heavy, season, which is usually the spring for us. So, I could be juggling all of those, but we're a small enough firm that, I really take a role in every one of them. Every single one of them, I can tell you what's going on in it, who the people are. I remember their kids' names. So I take it really personally. These people mean a lot to me, and their transactions mean a lot to me, and that I want it to be a happy transaction and not have a situation like this. But that does come up, and it's something that you can look into. It's always this fine line about how much due diligence, can you do. Massachusetts is a buyer beware state, so the seller doesn't have to give a disclosure. We do have our buyers do certain due diligence, checking with the town. Remember, making sure there's no permits open and things like that. But, how much do you have to do? And things come up, and we learn constantly from one deal to the next. So the beauty of doing so many deals is we get a constant learning experience from the prior deals and what we can do better on the next one.
I think it's amazing, and I do not run into that many tragic circumstances where literally the deal is hanging by a thread. And there are a lot of sleepless nights that everyone goes through. It's nice to see you come out there as the attorney hero. I love it. Amy, what's the favorite part of your job?
My favorite part of the job is really getting to know the people. A lot of the attorneys that do what I do, I'll talk to them and they're like, oh, I hate doing the closings. I'm like, that's my favorite part.
That's where we're all together and I get to come in and gab with my friend for a while.
Oh my gosh, I
right?
love it. I get to see them. And I had clients, a young couple come in the other day, and they were bouncing off the walls with excitement. They were just so excited. They had gone to see the house for the walkthrough. It was beautiful. They couldn't wait, and the signing these days doesn't take that long, but just getting to see them at that end day, when everything's done, they've gotten their mortgage, they've signed the papers, they've seen that house again, and they just remember how much they love it. And then the second part is I'll be in the grocery store, and I'll run into an old client, and they'll come up and they'll tell me how much they absolutely love their house, that it was the perfect house in the perfect neighborhood. And I just love hearing that they really, with the help of their broker and all the people on their team that they made just a great decision for themselves and for their family, and that it's really a happily ever after for them.
Do you work with a lot of first-time buyers?
I do. I love them. I love them. A lot of people are like, oh, they ask so many questions. I love that.
Everybody has their thing, I guess. And it's so funny when you said, oh, another attorney said they don't like closings. I hear these things all the time, especially on Facebook. I'll hear what people don't like. And I think when you're enthused and you found what you love to do, that it really shows through. I mean, I was lucky when I got out of college, I had some time to be able to dabble in some different things and figure out what I wanted to do. And the minute I got into real estate, I knew that I had found my calling and that I was going to be there forever. And I have been for 22 solid years, which isn't that long. I mean, I guess as a career, but I certainly still love it as much today as I did then. And you seem to be equally enthused. Your office has been at the same place since I met you on Grove Street in Wellesley. And it's such a great, convenient location because it serves the entire area. You have a large parking lot in the back. And really located conveniently. Which towns do you think you do the most closing in the area?
Well, there's no question we focus on Metro West, Wellesley, Needham, Natick, Newton, Weston. But we do a lot of work in Boston and Somerville and Cambridge. And not surprising, a lot of our clients buy on Cape Cod and the islands, Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard. So we actually have a very robust practice of folks that are buying on the Cape and the islands. So the nice thing is we can go anywhere in the state, and we do. So it doesn't really matter to us, especially with this electronic recording, you know, where the property is located. We can definitely help our clients wherever they're buying or selling, so that's really nice. And it is, you just get, you either love this or you don't. And to stay in an area and practice in it for over 30 years, you really have to love it. And I'm not saying there aren't days where, you know, you're talking about termites or water in the basement or something where you're just, you know, wringing your hands a little bit. But, you know, generally speaking, it's just such a happy career.
I can tell that you love it. And the reason that you and I met, I'll let people know, is one of my first transactions years ago, someone said, oh, we need money for tax stamps. I had no idea what a tax stamp is. No idea at all. And a couple of legal questions. And I was panicking, and they said, give Amy Weil a call. And I said, I can't, I don't have $500 an hour. I don't know, you know what I mean? And I really didn't understand the concept of being a real estate attorney at your level. You picked up the phone, you gave me the answer I needed. That was a great introduction that's lasted a lifetime.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can tell how much you love your job.
Yeah, I do.
And I enjoy working with you. And it's a pleasure to have you here with us today. I hope you'll come back at some point.
Anytime.
Talk about some more real estate topics.
Of course, happy to talk about
Amy Weil, Kertzman and Weil, Grove Street, Wellesley. Amy at KertzmanWeil.com, 781-237-8701. If you have any questions for Amy, feel free to reach out. We will be here. Thank you for watching John McHugh Real Estate. My email is johnsellsnow@gmail.com. Happy to help with any questions, and we look forward to seeing you next time.